which obfuscates our promissory obligations into falsified debts to a purported banking system, which in fact merely only publishes further representations of our own promissory obligations to each other. There is no debt to the banking system. There is an obligation to pay and to retire principal, but this is not to be laundered into the possession of this mere publisher of evidence of our promissory obligations to each other. So these people that we see paraded before us are representatives of the banking system because, as we understand now from the calls that I made to various campaigns which you've heard, as we understand now, these people are representatives of the banking system. They are figureheads. And it matters not to the banking system, purported banking system, which of these figureheads is elected. Not in our country, here in the United States, not in Ireland, not in England, not in any country of the world. It matters not which of the figureheads is elected, because the figureheads that are paraded before us are all figureheads of the banking system. And we know that because they won't touch the banking system. Now, I know that because we've engaged in intensive efforts to enlist or educate various political leaders and prospective leaders or candidates across the world, in Greece and numerous countries of the world, Australia, Canada. We've had leaders in Canada stand up. Jason Draper, head of the Independent Party of Canada, has run recently for, as we know, an office of Parliament on a platform of mathematically perfected economy. So why is it that none of these people will grant us representation? You know, I've done something since I'm not a TV watcher, but I've done something since I was very young, and I had a couple of uncles on both sides of the family tree who impressed me as a young boy because of their personal disposition to see through facades. And I remember when I was young, there was certain slang that was used. Metaphors, for instance, of a vacuum cleaner salesman or a used car salesman, which implied that the person that was referred to was full of it. And there was so many clues of this that my uncles, in their discussions, which I was just fascinated with, penetrated into, that this personal trait rubbed off on me, and I don't know, I know many of us are this way, but it's so incredible to me to try and watch the presidential debates in the United States here, for instance, with any ability to maintain any interest in it whatsoever. Something that I always do is while I'm listening to somebody, I shut out the volume. I focus on their demeanor. Look into their eyes, and I see whether or not, in their eyes I see whether or not they're speaking the truth. And I just cannot help but say that as I look into the eyes of Mitt Romney as he's constantly smiling, taking on this entirely falsified demeanor. I mean, let's just think about this seriously. The world is in the midst of an irreversible, conclusive, terminal, artificial monetary failure. And what is any person who is about to serve us doing, smiling about every issue before us? You know, we have this idea that, people should be always pleasant in their demeanor, and that, it's not, quote, politically correct, unquote, to get to the bottom of the matter right away. It's not politically correct, so said, to dispatch people or dismiss people who are inimical to solution, to even fruitful discussion of vital matters. But then when we're watching these, I intended to do an exhaustive criticism or response to each of the preposterous assertions of all of these preposterous candidates. I make no apology to you Ron Paul supporters. I meant to do a criticism, a response to all of these preposterous assertions by this literally absolutely disgusting array of purported presidential candidates. And I just, I just don't find anything worth even focusing on, because in my opinion, I ask no forgiveness for this opinion whatsoever. In my opinion, none of these people are even nearly fit to govern enough that any of us should give them any serious consideration whatsoever. Let's think back. Let's go back 4 years to Barack Obama reading from teleprompters way off to his left and way off to his right, back and forth, never even facing his audience with a kind of connection that any reasonable person could relate to. It's as if the vacuum cleaner salesman came to your door, and we used to have door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesmen when I was a kid, and they'd knock on your door, and imagine the vacuum cleaner salesman never even looking you in the face in an engaging way. He might glance your direction once, just as if he's engaging you, but when you look into your eyes, they're vacant. And so this guy comes to your door, he rings your doorbell, knocks on the door, and he's brought all these attachments with him, and he wants to give his spiel. Instead of speaking to you, he looks off to his left and he looks off to his right alternately, as if he's a great orator, and that is what oration is all about. I'm sorry, but this thing that I've done, no, I'm not sorry at all. This thing that I've done since I was a kid is shut off the volume. That is, I would turn off the volume, and I literally do this. And I watch George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan, and all that distinguishes these people is their own personal style of facade. When you're watching someone who knows what they're doing, who knows how to take us from point A to point B to point C and on down the road that we have to tread, instead of deviating to some other place from the beginning, from somewhere in the middle, from somewhere just before the end, down a route that will never get us there. When someone knows how to get us from A to Z, you see this in their demeanor. They don't have to read from a script. By God, they've mastered the material. They're accountable to every detail. You ask a question, they don't have to know what it is. The answer has already been thought of because they asked every question and answered it conclusively. You don't have to read from a teleprompter if you are fit to lead the world. These people are the worst imposters the world has ever known. And if it's not obvious to us every moment that we're watching them, if we even believe there's a reason enough to watch them other than to watch out for what they are going to do against us, then there is something very, 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 very wrong with us. This is something that I learned from my uncles. I said, it's amazing, my Uncle Dave, he's just like, he knows what everybody's really about. And how does he know that? And I carefully watched him, and I saw how his art was practiced by himself. And I saw this of other people, and I always thought it to be one of the higher human traits, the ability to see through facade, which is not just an admirable trait. It's in fact a vital responsibility in truly representative government. Because unless we are practicing this trait, which is available to all of us, then we are not really seeing after the matters at hand. So if we think back, to put all this into perspective, if we think back 4 years to Obama's run for the presidency, you probably remember him using the ancient Hopi legend. We are the ones we have been waiting for. What was this? How did he use this legend? But to deceive us that there was some impetus, that there was some driving force to solve our problems. If Obama belonged to the we that he said we are waiting for, how is it that the Obama administration to be, that is his campaign, returned to me a proposition to invalidate all other possible monetary propositions without even opening it? Sent as requested by certified delivery. How is it you would return such a thing without even opening it? If you were part of the ones we should be waiting for. It's not personal. It matters not to me who Obama is. and I make no apology for saying this, because I should never have to. Anyone who would do that is absolutely